lesser scientists, they'll try to tell you that, oh no, we know this. But I would encourage you, if you run into one of those, just go do an end run around them, go to their teachers, and you'll find out the greatest scientists in the world are absolutely bamboozled and befuddled by the cosmos. They just are utterly, utterly amazed. Stuff like, 70% of the universe apparently is made up of dark energy, and nobody knows what that is. It's 70%. That's off the top of my head. I think it's 70, something like that. Only 5-6% of the universe is made up of the stuff that's on our elemental chart in chemistry. Only 6%. I think it's 4 out of 6. Okay. The other 94% is made up of stuff that we don't know what it is. So the real scientists go, we're lost. And that's a good place to be, because we are too. We really are too. We talk about, and again, even in our theology, we're lost, aren't we? God, whatever that means, has a son, whatever that means. We love it, but we don't pretend that we understand it. Okay, C. To me, this is a big one for both sides. We must fight fair. There exists a wide range of intellectual and philosophical sophistication in human society. Sorry for all the big words, but that's just the best way to put it. It is unfair and unproductive, in fact, mean and squirrely and immature, for the elite of one side to attack the proletariat, what I call, of the other side, the man on the street of the other side. Let me go back to my own history to a time when we used to do this a lot. We fundamentalists, which is where I grew up, Protestant evangelical believers, used to beat up on Catholics all the time. Because there's so many Catholics, and the great 9% of Catholics are just theologically stupid beyond belief. And it was very, very unfair for those of us who are sword fighters to go and beat up Catholics who didn't know what they believed. Just because they were ignorant of their theology didn't necessarily mean they're wrong. Do you understand? That's my position now. They're just ignorant. That would be nice if they weren't ignorant, but just because they are, it doesn't mean we can go beat up. You see this happen a lot. In fact, and so that's one side. It is completely unfair if you are sharp in the kind of stuff I'm going to talk about here, in proving the existence of God, for instance. It is unfair for you to tackle, a 14-year-old in his sociological development, if he's a normal, to attack a kid who's an atheist. That's just not cool. You can talk with them, but it's dirty pool. Now here's where this really happens, I believe, the most, and it really, really does get my blood boiling, and it's on the other side. And I'm going back to university professors. Many of them apparently consider it their absolute obligation to destroy the faith of kids. And when we were 20, we didn't think we were kids. Now that we're older, we go, what? Every college kid is just a kid, and intellectually no match for Mr. Professor, who has been working on developing not only his verbal skills and his arguing skills, but his worldview for 20, 30, 40 years. And yet it happens all the time. And it is really, really, really dirty pool. Really, really underhanded. It's bullying is what it is. It's somebody who's big and strong beating up on somebody who's weak. But we need to make sure that we do not do the same thing. It's wrong for us to go the other way as well.
Real quick, as a fellow NPR listener, they ran a story on professors who were not getting tenure because they professed their faith.
Wow.
And also talked about, but to NPR's credit, they may not have done this on purpose, but they were showing what you're talking about, which is that there is an underlying culture in college to knock it down and get it out of the classroom.
Absolutely. Wow, I didn't hear that, but yep, exactly, that's what's going on. Okay, can I go on?
Please.
Observation D, it's bad form to play to one's audience. And I see this, I'd be throwing yellow flags all over the landscape if I could. We must resist the temptation to arrogantly boast in our own position or to say derogatory things about the opposing position simply because we know that our present audience agrees with us. And this goes for both sides. Let me give an example from our side.
Did you not just destroy the basis of at least 75% of the sermons being preached this morning?
Yeah, that could be. Could be. It happens in church all the time.
Preaching to the choir.
Preaching to the choir. Preachers get up and say, and ridicule unbelief. And do kind of smart aleck. And actually sometimes, I'm afraid I've done this in the past and a little bit, and I'm sorry. Because it's bad form. It's just hard to resist the temptation. Because I think all of you sort of agree with me about a lot of things. And it's easy for us to take pot shots at those who are not here.
Yeah.
And it happens in church. Now, it also happens, as a matter of fact, it happens on our local NPR station every morning from 9 to 12 with an elderly woman who leads a discussion. It is one of the most outrageously unbalanced conversations sometimes, and I enjoy listening to liberals talk, except this one, she does this so much that she just should be spanked. It is just egregious. It's just, she plays to her audience, and it's terrible. I don't think anybody, you never know how this feels till it's done to you. And that, to me, that's what sensitized me. And then I realized, oh, we Christians do the same thing. When we're in our church, when we're in our churches and we think everybody agrees with them, then we take pot shots at liberals or unbelievers or whatever, cheap shots. And that is just, Jesus would not do that because it's treating people with disrespect. So, okay, those are my 4 fundamental beliefs. Then I talked about my conclusion. One other thing about the conclusion, I say the debate it's going to end in a draw. And in fact, Chuck, I was in a big church a couple weeks ago painting, and Chuck made this point. You can't prove there's a God, you can't prove there's not a God. So it comes down to a decision. Yep, pretty good point. Now, I will make one other point, is that many times in our culture, believers are very inexperienced and ill-equipped to deal with serious challenges to their faith. So I don't know if that pertains probably less to this community than to many others, because we tend to think a lot in here. I think we think a lot in here. And again, that's unfortunate. You know, we send off our kids again to college quite ill-equipped to deal with some of these issues. So even though I don't think anybody's going to win the argument, I think we should know our side of the argument, is what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Even though you're not going to win, I think we should be able to defend our faith. Okay, and I've just called everything I did, for want of a better term, I've just called them observations. And you can probably recognize most of these with me. Observation number 1. Reality is very complex. And one can lay almost any preconceived pattern on top of it, and it will look as though the dots line up. Okay, do you know what I'm talking about here? Let me just use an illustration, for instance. And I wish I had time to draw it, but if we had a photograph of a box full of sand or gravel, and it has millions of little tiny dots all over it. Okay, got that? Put a photograph up here. And then we pick up a grid that is clearly organized. It's not random. There's lines, there's connectors in our grid, like a screen, if you will, that you can see through. Are you getting the picture? And we take this grid that you can see through, but it's got organized, and we lay it over that photograph of gravel. We're going to go, oh, look at the patterns that are appearing. Okay? Does that make sense? Because and it would look as though, yeah, look at this. You know, whoever drew this pattern must have had this gravel picture in mind, because look how many dots line up. Have I just lost half of you? That's because I'm a visual thinker. Okay? And of course that would be foolish. You could do the same thing with a photograph of the stars, like the real stars, not the way they are now when we can't see them because of the atmosphere. But you know, go to the planetarium and say, "Oh wow, that's how many stars we're supposed to be able to see." Right? Same thing. And you take any kind of pattern, overlay it over that, and say, "Wow." Well, in fact, that's what else is. What else are constellations? Right? Orion's belt. I don't see anything. You have to be told what they are and where they are and all that kind of stuff before you can see any constellations. This happens all the time. I was listening to Carl Sagan not long ago, and that kind of thinker, he does this all the time. Professors, again, do this to their young students all the time. A student goes in, an innocent, naive Christian student goes into the university with the worldview that we've inculcated into them, without the superstructure of